Hi, welcome back to our monthly podcast. I'm really excited about this month, but before we jump into our guest and learn a little bit more about him, I'm excited that you're with us as we just talk about faithfully leading and faithfully living. Want to remind you too, if you're watching, this is on iTunes or Spotify, or if you're as you're listening, and would like you to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. That really does help us out. We also every month, we'll be giving away to someone a book who is one of our followers of our podcast. And this month's winner is Amanda Kling, who has won the book from last month's podcast, Hope in the Darkness by Craig Groeschel. So look for next month's book giveaway, and congratulations, Amanda. So we are really, really super happy and excited for you and that. Today, I am really excited about our guest. Our guest is Cary Brooks. Cary is a longtime friend of mine. We've known each other probably, 15 years now, I think, something like that.
At least that.
Yeah, right, at least that. I've watched your kids grow up. You've watched my kids get born and kind of growing up a little bit here and there. And so, but Cary is one of those men of faith that I truly believe when Hebrews talks about those in the Hall of Fame of faith. Cary, you are one of those people that I just put that and say, I aspire to have a faith like yours, because it is truly, truly amazing. So welcome. So glad you're here with us. We're going to dive in and hear a little bit about you and your leadership style as you faithfully live and faithfully lead as well. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family?
Well, it's great to be here, Pastor Greg. I have 4 children, 3 boys. The oldest is Cary Jr., second oldest is Ken, and then Rob, and the youngest is my daughter, Libby. And they're fun, lively, a funny group, and they're in their close to their 30s now, 30 to 35, and so I'm having a lot of fun with them as adults. It's exciting. Cary Jr. is quite a talented guy, and he's a head brewer at our brewery. And he can do all kinds of things, and that's fun to see him come into his own here in his early 30s. And so that's fun. Ken's doing great. He works with me along with Rob in my law firm. And Ken married this wonderful woman, and they have 3 children. Will is the oldest. He's 4. Then Quinn is 3, and June is 1.5. And so he's got a house full of fun entertainment there. And Rob and Lib are still, working on their careers and developing that. Rob works with me as a patent attorney, and Libby is a certified public accountant.
Wow. That's just terrific. Hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about your faith journey, because your faith story is inspiring to me.
Oh, well, I wasn't, I didn't grow up in the church. I remember going to kindergarten, and I would say, maybe about the time that I was 6 or 7, my parents stopped going to church for some reason. They're from Atlanta, Georgia, and they came up to Detroit for, some of the good jobs, if you would, in the factories. And then, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but all my brothers and sisters tell me that they just, stopped going to church. So, later on in life, I went to Michigan State University, and after I graduated from Michigan State University, I got really sick. And I was in the hospital for about 6 weeks, and really couldn't find out what was wrong with me. And eventually they figured out that I had this cyst in my pancreas. Mm-hmm. And then they put me in this ward with people that had the similar kind of ailment, if you would. And they gave me one roommate, and he died a few days later. And then they brought another one in, and he died from the same thing, a couple days after that.
Wow.
And I had this surgery, and I was thankful to make it through it. And I don't really know how that happened, but any rate. And then, I used to run around with the guys and stuff, but I couldn't go to any place that they usually went to. And so my friends told me that, there were a lot of cute girls hanging out at the roller skating rink. And so I started going there, and I met my wife there. So, and we got married. Just we dated for 2 months, and we got married.
No way! I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so, and then we had started having children about 2 years later, and I was going to law school at night while I was working. And, she came from a Lutheran family. Like, she went to a Lutheran elementary school and high school. And, I think she might have gone to public high school, but her parents were Lutheran and they're, the German heritage, if you would. And I could tell that, faith was really important to her, and she would try to get me to go to church. And, I was kind of tired by the time Sunday rolled around and that sort of thing. But really, I think that, the Holy Spirit worked through her and then and worked through me. And I could tell that this was something, important to her. So I started going to church with her and the family. And it was really neat. It was in the chapel, and you had to scoot down the aisle, the pew to make rooms for people. And it was enjoyable then. It was really crowded, and then there was times that you actually couldn't get into the chapel. There were so many people.
Right.
But she it was really great because she really lived out her faith every day. I mean, it's like I think it was a really beautiful experience to see happen on a daily basis, and so I didn't have all the head knowledge that, a lot of the people have. And so I since then, I've read the Bible a number of times, but, people are affected by different things. And I became affected by really the contemporary Christian music. It really spoke to me.
Yeah.
My wife actually was working for Compassion International, and she would go to these things and do a table at these concerts. And so we kind of got into that, but, it just was something that, as I, went along, if you would, I became aware, I wouldn't say I had an awakening or that sort of thing, but I became aware of what work the Holy Spirit had done in me and this faith. And, I always knew there was something else, but, besides just this life that we have here, but, I really became to understand a little bit more, and really it was like more of a heart thing for me of that led to a relationship with Christ. So it's really a blessing. I thank God for my wife. I think that she was my greatest gift, and that she was really like God's love letter to me.
Yeah. And, I think I hear you talking about that, and it's so true how I think that God does surround us with, and this is what scriptures say a marriage is, right? Of where we're surrounded with a person to not serve us or be served by us, but to actually walk alongside us.
Yeah.
And just a person who encourages, supports, sometimes rebukes us, right? But really is there to just help us in this journey, and that's just a beautiful and a sweet thing that we get to be part of for that time. Yeah. So, and man, I mean, you just really, I knew Christian music. I didn't know, I knew contemporary Christian music was a love of yours because you brought so many concerts here to this place.
Yeah, it was great.
Before they're big. I mean, Laura Story, before she was kind of, Phil Wickham we had before he was kind of big. We just recently had 10th Avenue North that you helped bring here as well. And
we had, that was the first concert we did was in 2019. And it was 10th Avenue North, and they just got started. I mean, they'd been around, but they just won an award, a Dove Award. And so that was exciting. It was the church was packed, and it was a great thing to see. I mean, the young kids really enjoyed it.
It was wonderful.
And that was, over the years, some parents came up to me, and particularly, even like Karen Reinking, she said how much those concerts meant to her children. So that was, I was trying to share with somebody what, the gift that I had been given, and having fun at the same time.
Yeah. So, so all this faith journey is amazing, and you have got this amazing heart. and you're a lawyer.
Yeah,
Right?
there's a few good ones. you
Yeah,
know.
right. No, there's a lot of great lawyers out there, and you are absolutely one of the tops. But how'd you go about first? Tell us a little about the practice of law that you're in, and then how'd you want to become a lawyer?
Yeah. Well, I'm in something called intellectual property, and that's, has to deal with creating property rights regarding ideas. Okay. A little bit more complicated than that. So, we mainly work on obtaining patents for, companies or individuals. My practice is mainly for big companies, or getting trademarks or copyrights and that sort of thing. And so I kind of got into it because, when I was going to, high school, I really loved science and the physical. I really loved physical science and math, and I liked to debate. I was on the debate team, but they called it forensics. I think that's a Greek term for how the philosophers used to argue. Okay. But at any rate, so I enjoyed doing these arguments, but I also thought, I liked biology, and I thought that it would be great to be a doctor and help people and that sort of thing. So, I went to Michigan State, and I was like a pre-med for the first year. And I got done with the first year of courses, and I had like just a little bit over a 3.6 average. And, I saw this counselor, and he said, well, that's never going to be good enough to get into med school. And I thought, man, that was a lot of work to get a 3.6 something. Yeah. And so then I had lots of buddies. I'd played hockey in junior A, and I was a captain of a junior A team in Canada. And my buddies were on, some of my buddies were on Michigan State, and they said, hey, you can play here. Why don't you come out and play? And so I did. And so then I looked around and I said, well, okay, if I'm not going to be a doctor, what can I do? And, I looked at all the curriculum, and this is the truth. I thought that chemical engineering was the toughest major, the most difficult to get through at Michigan State. And so I picked that major. But first, before I started getting into it, I went to the placement office, and I looked at what percentage of people got a job graduating with that degree and what they get paid. And, it all was good. That was at the top, really, at that time. Sure. And so I decided to get into that. And then near the end of that, I was into the chemical engineering program. I got this award for the National Chemical Engineer Student Contest problem, where you design a plant and you try to make it the most profitable and all that. And the guy that taught that had lots of patents, and he talked to me about, guys that, get patents and the patent attorneys that do the work for them. And, and it seemed like a great combination between the ability to do the debate, if you would, argue, and also loving science. So, we get to see all kinds of new, interesting things. You get to argue and that sort of thing. You get to learn the law and the science and the engineering. And so it's very intellectually stimulating. And as it turns out, it's just a fantastic career. There's like over 2 million attorneys, and there's only like 26 patent attorneys in the country.
Wow. Yeah. See, I didn't realize that. And
you have to have an engineering degree or a degree in the physical sciences to actually, you have to take another test besides the state bar. You have to take a patent bar test, and you can't sit for that without those degrees.
Wow. And so I learned that because your son was going through it at Wayne State, right? Yeah. And that's when I first learned. I think for, probably 14 years now, I didn't realize that the patent attorneys also, you had to have a degree in one of those sciences. And it just blew my mind. Yeah,
honestly. Those two things don't really mix. Yeah. Like engineering or science, it's more precise. And then, law is gray and, seems, and it's a lot of reading. So, I remember when I was studying engineering, you read the same sentence for 4 times before I could figure out what it really said. So,
well, I do that with the Bible a lot of times too. So figuring out what Jesus says. Yeah. Oh man. So it's something interesting. If I can just sidestep a little bit too, you said you picked chemical engineering because that was the toughest one to do. And I guess that just tells me a little bit about, can you talk about, I think leaders leaders never look for the easy road. They always look to say, I want to take the tough road or the high road on that. Can you just maybe share a little bit about just what's in you that says, I want to achieve and thrive to the best? Do you know?
Yeah, well, I think that's, kind of, it's an innate property that's actually built into us. It doesn't come out in everyone and may not come out early on, but, we're really, I think we're here for a greater purpose, and we should, if we're going to do something, we should do it to the best of our ability. And really, that goes for, you can't do it in everything, but you can do it in a lot of things, whether it's your career. I really thought that about my marriage, like I was constantly trying to make it better. And really, it's part of your character, kind of like, part of, of you, but it also says, a lot about, why you live the way you do, that you're, all that honors God, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that comes out also is this not being afraid to fail and really saying, you know what, I'm going to try and I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to go and I'm going to work as hard as I can and work to succeed. Yeah. And not letting the fear of failure or the intimidation of something kind of stop us from what we're trying to do. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that, I'm a thinker planner, if you would. And so I do that and I really work hard at whatever I'm trying to accomplish. But, my experience has been that, a lot of times that may not work. But usually God's plan for my experience has been God's plan for me is always better than mine. Right. I still try to use, I kind of take the approach in life that God has provided an endless abundance of things for us to use. And it's just a matter of us trying to figure out how to do that and try to do it the best we're capable of. Yeah. But a lot of times it doesn't always turn out the way that we want it to, but it leads to other great things. That's really been my experience of my life in lots of different ways.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I think God really has given us everything we need in this life to care for others and care for ourselves, and then really too to just trust in Him and say, hey, this is a God that rose from the dead, right? He's going to take care of us even greater than we can always understand.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, so how do you live out your faith in your practice of law?
Well, attorneys get a lot of knocks and that sort of thing. And, I rarely watch any of these, lawyer shows or movies or anything, because I think they're like really pretty unrealistic. I live out my, my faith by basically, the Judeo-Christian values, if you will, honesty, integrity, trying to help people whenever you get a chance to help people, even if there's not going to be something in it for you, if you would. But, and then, try to use the opportunity to meet people just to just live out your faith right in front of them, just not so much, in words, if you would, but your actions and how you carry yourself. And, with the people that I work with, I've done a number of things to help other people. I've started, I think one of the great things that, I learned in my faith is the gift of learning, actually how to give, to let go, to really trust. Like when you have a partner that you completely trust, I mean, that's one of the, most awesome things you can have in life. And so, I think God wants that kind of a relationship with us that we really trust. So, I did a lot of things where we raised money for different shelters around the Detroit area and fed people, if you would. We put together these, feeding programs, if we will. Sure. I think Kids Against Hunger we used a number of times. And so I got people to, basically donate their time as a professional doing work for me. And we took the money from that work and donated it to these different charities around the Detroit area. And I think that, we donated over $300,000 doing that, through a law firm that I worked in. And then from there, I started this Alms project that, does the concerts and also does more things like doing the feeding programs and digging water wells and things like that. Yeah. But in the places where I've worked, I've been bold, and we've had lots of different. I ran Bible studies there, and just with a few people, and I also got other people to come in. I did the Ray Vanderland series, and a lot of the people of Jewish faith came to that, and they really liked it, and because we share that same heritage with them. We share those same values, if you would. And we did the Truth Project there, and we did the Purpose-Driven Life. And so, that was really good.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I heard quite a few things out of that, and I just want to circle back around. First, you talked a lot about just the values of honesty, integrity, and then I would say even the value of generosity came out of those things. And I think we live in a world today that is, I would say craving to see people living out those values. Help me out as a parent of younger children, right? And you have kids that are living out those values now that are, as you said, it's fun to be with adult kids, right? How do you instill that into those values into your kids? How do you share that and show that to them?
That's a good question. It's a little bit difficult. I don't know that you are, at least I wasn't constantly focused on that. But I think one of the best things that, parents can do for their children is to show them a loving relationship, in their marriage. And, I think that, our time here on this earth, I believe is about relationships. It's about, a relationship with God, a relationship with others. It's about loving God and loving others, and intertwined in that is, living for a higher purpose. But, we really tried to, it was natural for us to have they saw a loving atmosphere, a loving relationship in the household. And this, just out of that, naturally comes, learning how to be kind, how to be patient, how to be forgiving, how to be thoughtful, how to be a servant. When you marry somebody, it's like Jesus in the Last Supper. It's like he's saying, "I lay down my will for you." Right. You're laying down your will for the other person.
Right.
And so that's really like, that's, we can't completely understand God's love, but we get bits and pieces of it. And that's really, it's, learning how to love and learning how to love unconditionally, that sort of thing. So there's just lots of great traits that, over the time, if you just interact with your children and, they see you having a great relationship with your spouse. Yeah. And, that takes work. This doesn't naturally come. You have to really work at it. But all those things come out. And, I'm really pleased. We have fantastic kids. They're bright and stuff. And I'm sure that they were a challenge for a number of the teachers here at school. But, that's just because I think they're, a little bit bored, if you would, but they're still good kids and stuff.
Yeah, they are. I think all our kids are challenging at times, but it's a little bit part of who they are, and even in those challenges, I think they learn. And then they learn the values of what comes out of those challenges, like yours have. So, what would you say to someone who is watching this, or a younger person, or maybe a parent who's got a child who's, thinking about becoming a lawyer, thinking about becoming a patent attorney or intellectual property attorney? What advice would you give them? What living advice would you give them?
Well, I guess, like it, my advice would be really to stop and think it through and make really good decisions. I'm not so much of a, go with your heart or go with your feelings kind of thing. Try to make a really good decision because, being a patent attorney is a fantastic career, and it's particularly a fantastic career for women. I don't mean to be sexist, but once you learn how to do this, you can have a great career whether you work full time or whether you take some time off, to raise a family or something.
Yeah.
You can get back in it, and you can work anywhere in the United States, and it's just a really rewarding career, and it's well paying, if you would. Yeah. But make smart decisions. It's if you go to one of the cheapest law schools, it's going to cost more than $150,000. And I like think about money a lot, not in a bad sense, but it's like somebody,
a good steward has to. Right?
Somebody has to make at least $225,000 for you to have $100,000 to pay for law school. So one thing would be, make sure that you really prepare for the LSAT test, because a lot of these schools now are giving 60, 80, 100% scholarships. When I went to school, that was like not around at all. Oh, yeah. Rob, my son Rob, studied for it, and there's classes, and he got some scholarships that were like $160,000 a year, in New York and stuff like that. But it would cost him $100-something thousand to live in New York. Yeah. Yeah. But he had a really great scholarship at. He went to UAD, and he worked for me. And so you have to also think about, is it really worth it to go to school full time? Because that's 3 years and you're losing all that income, for 3 years. But, think it through. That's a lot of money to spend, and you can do lots of things with that, and do something that you're good at, and learn how to love something you're good at, I think, but, not everybody. A lot of times people going to law school, believe it or not, it's because they got a degree that they can't get a job with. So you really have to think about, are you going to make a second mistake here or not? So that's probably not the advice that people would, think naturally that somebody would give, but just be smart about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if you're doing anything for money or for ease, or you just kind of feel like you have to, you're not going to be successful in it, right? Because there's no passion behind it,
right?
Two, you're going to get to be middle aged, and you're going to hate everything, right?
Yeah.
And really, if you don't love what you do and get to go and love that where you're doing it, it's going to be hard to come home and love who you're with, because you're going to be carrying just misery all day. So I hear you completely, and I think that is just great advice for any person as they're preparing and thinking about their career path. Love what you do, and learn to love what you do, and do it for the right reasons. Yeah. And be able to see not that you have to go to work every day, but you get to, right? Yeah. And whatever it is. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with you on that one. Hey, so Cary, let me ask this. If you could tell yourself something 10 years ago, your 10-year-old, I heard this question one time and I loved it, and I just thought it was great. What would you tell yourself a decade ago?
You mean like buy more Amazon or eat less cake?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that definitely. Kind of thing.
Amazon and Apple stock. Yeah, all those things.
Well, by that time, I knew that I had a pretty fantastic life. Yeah. And I would say, just remember that you have a life that was beyond anything you could have dreamed of. You have this wonderful family, you have this wonderful relationship with your wife. Keep working at that. Keep, don't stop. Study them, study your wife, learn how to love her. Get a bachelor's degree, get a master's degree, get a PhD, and then become an expert at that. And, just don't stop and cherish those moments with your family, and be serious about your career. Take risk, but remember why you're doing these things. For me, it was, I wanted to, I loved what I was doing, and I wanted to be, a great provider for my wife and my family. That was my motivation, And so, but you can overdo with that sometimes. And just, and I would say, because I was such a thinker planner, I would remind myself, try to live in the moment sometimes, just, don't always be living for the next 5 years or something like that. Live in the moment, enjoy things that are here and now, because they're precious. And you never know what's going to happen.
No. And you're doing that. You guys you took the family on a little vacation.
Yeah, it was awesome. Right? Yeah, it was great.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Yeah. So let me ask this question. What are you telling yourself the 10 year from now, Cary? What are you preparing for the 10 years from now?
The future me?
The future you. Yeah. What are you telling yourself?
Well, I tell myself, don't be so mad at me. At this time I had a lot of things going on, juggling some businesses, and, my wife having, died, 2 years ago, April 30th. And, still struggling with that, but I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to look forward to other things. And just remember, again, that, this, from my perspective, this life is about relationships, and work on those relationships. And, remember to call your children, and call your grandchildren, and work on being a better father. And forgive yourself about the past. Things happen, and things don't always work out the way you want them to, but they work out the way God wants them to. Yeah. And I guess just I would say to myself, if you find somebody, I hope that you're enjoying that person's company, and that you're having fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of just tremendous nuggets there. I mean, first, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror, and I believe this. I can take some heat once in a while for this, but I truly do believe this. I don't believe God sees us as poor, wretched, miserable sinners. I think God sees us in the light of His Son, which is this amazing, wonderful, loved children. And I think God wants us to see ourselves in the same way that He does, and to be able to forgive, and to be able to move and say who we are, which is His redeemed, royal, wonderful children that He delights over, right? I mean, I think this is that parent-child relationship that I heard you kind of talking about too, of just, when I look at my children, I never see in them as the defining character of who they are. I never see the things that they've done wrong, or the headaches that they've caused me, or the hurts or heartaches. I see my two girls that I love, that I would do anything for at a moment's notice, right? Yeah. And I think that's how God sees us. I know that's how God sees us. And I think we need to, like you were saying, see ourselves in that same way. Yeah. And then two, cherish the relationships we have.
Right.
I think it really is family first, and work and life second. And a lot of times people say, well, God's first. I actually have come to realize God's already always there. Yeah. You know what I mean? We don't have to name Him first, because He's the center. Right. And so it's not, I don't even think I would say it's God, family, career. I think it's just family, career, and God's just always around in the midst there, sometimes lifting us and carrying us. And then two, I just loved your reality too of God's got this. Yeah. God's got everything that's going on through us, and that's just amazing. Cary, any closing thoughts? Anything you're saying? Man, I really want to just share this.
Oh no, I guess I've been blessed really to have faith. Yeah. And to have realized it, and I'm blessed to get closer to Christ through my wife, and I'm happy. I'm delighted that I get a chance to think about other people, and to try to give that to them. A lot of times when I first started coming to the chapel, I'd think about all the generations that came before me that helped make this possible. All these people that did something to help someone else along in their faith. And that's just a great thing. And a lot of times we think that our faith is for ourselves, but it's not really. It's for us to share with other people. And God's so giving that we need to learn how to give to other people in all aspects of life.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I got to tell you, you've given me the blessings of just a tremendous friendship. And I learn from you every day, and I really do. And I'm a better husband, a better father, a better pastor, and a better person because of our friendship. So I really do thank you for everything. And
thank you, Pastor Greg.
There are a lot of people out there that are going to watch this, and they're going to learn too. And it's going to be really great. So, Cary, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. And once again, we'd invite you to share this, review it, subscribe to this podcast, and continue living out each and every day, faithfully living and faithfully leading. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next month.